Namaste and greetings. I, Priyanka Negi, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav Evam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today marks the day 3 and the concluding session of Feminism from Suffrage to Social Media, Reflections on the Four Waves. An online international winter school program, a 3-day immersive online certificate training course. This program is organized by IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center. The chair for the program is Professor Vibhuti Patelji, Visiting Distinguished Professor at IMPRI. The conveners for this program are Dr. Simi Mehta and Dr. Arjun Kumar. Proceeding further, I heartily welcome you all to Feminism from Suffrage to Social Media, Reflections on the Four Waves. We have shared the course outline and reading resources via email for your kind reference and perusal. Before we start today's session, I would like to announce the housekeeping rules. It is imperative that you join the meeting on time. There will be a Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise and refrain from making general comments in the questions to save time. I now invite the chair of the program, Professor Vibhuti Patelji, for her opening remarks for today. Welcome, ma'am, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Priyanka Negi, for introducing the course and also telling the housekeeping rules. I welcome Professor Roxana Marinescu and Dr. Linda Lane, who has been with us from day one, very keenly engaged right from the beginning till end. And esteemed participants, you have made the whole course so meaningful by your very proactive part in the discussion. First day was dedicated to pioneering feminism and also fight for the basic rights from 1850 to 1940, where Dr. Leena Pujari, she provided the framework of suffrage movement and also with a special focus on American feminists. And she also brought out so many nuances in the intersectional perspective, how the working class responded, how the Black population responded, how the abolition of slavery group versus the suffragists, they had so many contradictions in their perspective. She talked about the Seneca Fall and also tried to show several parallels in the unfolding of the subsequent movements and how the divide that was created between the white feminist and the women of color that also got pronounced in course of time. The second presentation was extremely nuanced because Professor Polly, she also gave a very important Vauquline. She spoke on intersectionality in early feminism, race, class, and gender dynamics with a specific focus on Northeast. And she also, first of all, introduced the Northeastern geopolitical situation and the geography and how the isolation that happens. And she also talked about the distinct characteristics of Northeastern states. And within that, she contextualized the early feminist efforts to fight for women's rights. Now, Northeastern shares boundary with Bhutan, Tibet, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and China. So the 5 nations, there are 160 scheduled tribes, 475 ethnic groups, and 400 dialects which are spoken. And the whole diversity is happening only in the area of 7.77% of India's total land mass and 3.8% of total population. She also talked about the glorious legacy of early feminism in Northeast India and the establishment of Assam Mahila Samiti in 1990, Tejpur Mahila Samiti in 1921, how they brought Gandhiji to Northeast and so many developmental and constructive work which was started by iconic character such as Chandraprabha Saikyani. She talked about the role of Assam Pradesh Mahila Samiti, which in challenging some of the traditions and especially the Brahminical domination, though the caste system and the layered hierarchy is not so solidified in northeastern state. And she also said that that their mouthpiece, which was the Jaitri, how it played important role in conscientization of women. She talked about 1939, how the second New Pilan is a forced labor, and she also saw a lot of similarity between the anti-abolitionist, about which Dr. Leena Pujari had talked about, and the New Pilan campaign, which was started by Manipuri women against the forced labor. In fact, that the whole temperate movement, where the opposition to alcohol, that also happened in the American suffragist movement. And similarly, you also had a woman leader who talked about the non-use of opium, no? So that campaign which the women started, and she said the current sad scenario where the cookies and Maitis, there's a lot of ethnic tension that is taking place. Media is also escalating this kind of a strife, and there are economic vested interest in Manipur, especially the dense forest, and how the predatory capitalist interest is thriving on this kind of a division, and the color of religion is added to it. She narrated the history of Naga Mothers Association in 1984, and she also talked about Mission Birubala, the current movement, which is anti-witch hunting campaign, which was started in 2011, and now also it is still active. So this first day was extremely important in terms of going back and forth in the history and seeing that how so many things get repeated in history and so many the new learnings that come. On day two, I began with the questioning of reproductive rights concern, that do women have a control over their reproduction? Well, do women have a freedom to choose whether, when, how many children they would like to produce? Well, the safe contraception, the question of abortion, question of marital rape, all these things were discussed. And throughout the life cycle, what are the reproductive health concerns we have, and the whole paradigm shift from reproductive control to reproductive autonomy, and so how the women's movement over last 40 years has fought on this issue, and the global feminist solidarity also helped in the form of formation of FINRIDGE, Feminist International Network on Reproductive Rights and the genetic engineering, where lot of exchange and sharing of documentation data was happening, which helped the action agenda to fight against harmful contraceptives or the vertically imposed population control program by the nation state. And it also emerged that whether you are a pro-natalist or anti-natalist, women are just treated as a vessel, not as a citizen. And after that, we had a very interesting and a totally new arena where Dr. Nabanita Sengupta talked about the cultural feminism and gender role deconstruction in the second wave. She began with the mentioning of Simone de Beauvoir's important work of Second Sex, where the millions of copies were sold. And she also, in Europe, the kind of new thinking that was emerging in the second wave, which focused on autonomy and freedom and dignity. And she, after Second World War, the baby boom that happened, and the demands on women to go back to home and be the homemaker, and the boredom it created, that also got reflected in so many creative writings. She took examples of three important, the detailed case study she provided of Betty Friedan's Feminine Mystic, which all of us used to, at that time in our younger days, in college days, we used to read. We may not agree with it, but the sentiment of women's constraint and women's control, that sexuality, fertility, labor being controlled by the patriarchal value system, that resonated with feminists. Though we had a certain reservations about white feminists enjoying the privileges of white patriarchy. She also talked about the second very important book was a Marilyn Friends, Women Room, which also talked about the busting of American dream of a suburban educated white housewife, though it was totally focused on the white women's spangs who enjoyed certain they had a privileged position, but and as against that, there are Black women. She mentioned Maya Angelou's work. I know why Caged Bird sings, and she told the story of Maya Angelou's struggle, survival struggle as a child, and in her growing up years. She read the poetry by Audre Lorde, Audre Lorde, and Power, and she talked about the incident, real life incident, where a 10-year-old Black boy named Clifford Clover was killed in 1973 by a racist police officer, Thomas Shea. And the poem was extremely powerful. Now also, like it resonates when you see so many oppressed nationalities and minorities, they fight against the kind of, and also if we see those very heartbreaking photographs of children in Palestine, or also the Ukraine war, or in so many African countries, that the same kind of scenario, where the state repressive forces, they target innocent human beings. No? So it was very important I think all four presentations, they continuously brought the issue of intersectionality and what are the learnings of the previous two, the first and second wave of feminism. And though each country says that we had an earlier famine, we had our foremothers rooted in our own soil, but they were individual expression, while the feminists, they demanded the political change and transformative change and the citizenship right. That is a qualitative difference that we found. And today we are going to have, again, very, very interesting two sessions by Professor Dr. Linda Lane and Professor Roxana Marinescu. Over to Priyanka. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for capturing the program so far. With this, we'll move on to the first session of the day. I'm honored to invite Professor Linda Lane, Senior Lecturer, Department of Social Work, University of Gothenburg, Sweden, for a talk on the third wave of feminism, embracing diversity and identity. We welcome you, ma'am. The floor is all yours. Please take it from here. Ma'am, you're on mute.
So, first of all, I would like to thank IMPRI for the invitation and for all of my colleagues who've gone before me, who've provided food for thought and helped very much in the preparation of this presentation. I'd like to begin by sharing my screen. Let's see here. This should do it. Is it, I'm trying to make it, there we go. So, yes, the third wave of feminism, embracing diversity and identity. This is a very, very broad subject, of course, and my lecture today is going to be very much around the literature about what the third wave has, what it is, how it emerged. But I think it would be remiss of me not to bring up my own kind of struggles with the third wave. And I think that will be clear in my presentation about where I am as a feminist myself, and where I want to be, and why I'm probably not as good a feminist as I would like to be. But all of these things are, I think, some of the things that we struggle with as women in the first place, and as feminists as well. I would also like to make a very small correction. I am no longer a senior lecturer at the Department of Social Work. I am now an independent researcher. And that's quite simply because people get older, you know? So I'm finally retired from university, and I can't claim that any longer. So yeah, I'm now an independent researcher. I still do the same kind of research as I was doing previously, but now I don't get paid for it.
Like on.
Yeah, you know, that's the way we women work.
Yeah.
So, to start off, I think I need to say something about who I am and where I am. And I think location is very important. And especially when we are talking about the third wave, because a part of the whole idea of the third wave is the way it kind of organized itself in terms of identities and trying to realize who you are as as a person, all the complications of being that are kind of included in this kind of physical body or mind of the individual. So in my case, I'm Swedish kind of, because I do live in Sweden. I'm a migrant. I'm a Black American. I'm working class because that's my background. But, being an academic kind of promotes you. It puts you on this kind of class traveling position. So I guess I could say, if people look at me now, yeah, you're probably pretty middle class, heterosexual mother. And as I said before, I'm getting on up there. I'm old, but I'm able-bodied. I mean, I'm a Black radical wannabe, I usually say, because I'm not there yet. I'm still troubled by some of the struggles and conflicts that are a part of this kind of radicality and about, what it means to be Black and what it means to be, a part of Black radicalism at the same time trying to participate in feminist struggles. So I think I could, maybe add that I'm a second, third wave, border hopper. I change around a bit, It depends on the question. So sometimes I see myself very firmly stuck in the second wave feminism because I do feel that materiality is important. I do think that constructions and, social structures are important. So it's there, the kind of ambiguity that I struggle with. And I'm sure that some of you, as young people, students, researchers, are struggling with the same thing. So hopefully this short lecture will kind of open up for some discussion. I'm looking forward to lots of questions and lots of discussion, following my short presentation. So get this party started. Now, for those of you who weren't born then, Pink was this kind of rather famous pop star, and she had this music, this hit that came out in 1991 that says, "Get this party started on a Saturday night." And we can talk about this because this is something that is very interesting. This party was starting then around third wave feminism. And one of the major impetuses to this was the Anita Hill hearing, where she testified around the issues of sexual harassment by the then circuit judge, Clarence Thomas, who was at that point had been nominated to become a member of the American Supreme Court. She accused him. Actually, she didn't accuse him directly. And this is a point I'd like to make very clear here. And I think Professor Patel mentioned it yesterday, the importance of the free press. Because what happened was that in 1991, she had been discussing this with colleagues and friends about, issues around Clarence Thomas as a presumptive judge. And this information was leaked to the National Public Radio Service, who was then a woman named, I think her name is Leena Totenberg. She's the correspondent there. And she aired it. She brought this out to the public knowledge. So from then on, this was set in motion. So we can say that the Anita Hill outing of the sexual harassment by Clarence Thomas was kind of Me Too moment of the 1990s. The fact that she was not listened to, the fact that she was publicly humiliated in a hearing at the in the American Congress. And Joe Biden, who is the outgoing president, he was one of the men who questioned her in a very derogatory and very negative way. He has later actually apologized for his behavior, but that doesn't change the fact that he used his power to denigrate a person who was trying to make her voice heard. Now, in the aftermath of the Clarence Thomas hearings, of course, he's a man. He was appointed as judge. He's now a member of the Supreme Court, continues to be very conservative. He's a voice of dissent about anything around issues of femininity, around issues of women's rights. He can be counted on to to object to anything that would further or benefit women or even minorities. He considers himself, although he's a black man, he considers himself as never having been. The civil rights movement has not was not of benefit to him. So he sees himself as a particular, very special form of man, so it's to say. Now, of course, as I said yesterday, as has been spoken about previously, the importance of kind of trying to understand the forerunners. What is it that gives impetus to change? And this hearing, after the hearing, the discuss, and I think a lot of the kind of lack of hope that was expressed by women and women's organizations, groups, not just against sexual harassment, but about the state of women in America, in this case, in general. So it was this young woman, Rebecca Walker, who in an article proclaimed, among other things, that she was the third wave because she thought that what had happened, the discussions of the second wave had not helped Anita Hill. She was, the second wave had failed there. Now, I think it's important to note here that Rebecca Walker isn't just any person. She's the daughter of Alice Walker. And yesterday, Professor Sengupta talked about the color purple and Alice Walker's, other interests in feminist movements. So this girl is not coming from anywhere. She's at this point and among the elite. She's a student at Yale. She's 22. She's had the opportunity to both, be a little bit wild and crazy, but also come back to the fold, to embrace her status, actually an elite status, if we look at her in relation to other groups of minorities or other Black young women or Chicano Asian women at the same time. So I tell you what I want, what I really, really want is the next step here, I think, because this is a song by the Spice Girls from 1996, Girl Power Light. If you weren't born then, look them up on YouTube. They, But she, in her statement in this article in Ms. Magazine, Rebecca Walker wrote, for many of us to be a feminist in the way we have been seen or understood feminism is to conform to an identity that doesn't allow for individuality or complexity. We fear that this identity will dictate and regulate our lives, forcing us to choose inflexible sides, female against male, Black against white, oppressed against oppressor. This binary way of ordering the world is challenging in a generation that has grown up embracing transgender, bisexual, interracial identities, and loving people who may hold sexist or racist views. So Rebecca Walker is kind of seen as the first person to express this kind of idea publicly or in a written form in a major way. I have just, included her entire text in my readings in case you want to take a look at it. Now, two things arise here. A generational perspective. This is something new from the new, they're saying young people do things different. We see things differently than our mothers and foremothers to previous feminist, waves have done. And the second major, kind of departure from second wave feminism is this idea that it embraces diversity, contradiction, prioritizes individual freedom and choice. And for, this, in this respect, I guess you could say that it responded to three real inadequacies or experienced inadequacies of the second wave feminism. The first, they kind of, emphasize the personal narratives. This idea that we were talking about, the personal is political, gets some real impetus in third wave movements. It becomes the narrative, the individual narrative becomes the thing. It also prioritizes multivocality and, diversity, many voices. Everybody's voice can be heard. This is, kind of being inclusive of everything. And for me, as, kind of, a bit on the sideline, sitting on the fence here, my question, if everything is included, what then? How are we going to how are we going to make any kind of transformative change? But I'll come back to that. And also in reaction to this decisiveness of the sex wars, they kind of take the position that, they won't be judgmental. Everybody is going to be included. And this kind of strikes me in the face of the kind of discussion that Audre Lorde was bringing up. Can I actually include the policeman, this racist policeman that Dr. Sengupta talked about in the poem yesterday? Must I be inclusive of this kind of attitude, of this kind of difference? Or is that difference also included and should be a part of the way I think about third wave feminism? I'm not sure. And of course, it makes for very differing and difficult possibilities to kind of find some ways of building coalitions. How can I both talk about Black Lives Matter and defend the blue, at the same time? In the American context, this was an issue around the Black Lives Matters discussion. So a lot of things are happening. This third wave, it opens up for so many more complexities, but it also leaves very, very, very many questions unanswered. I just wanted to mention a couple of front figures here. And of course, some of them may, I've already mentioned Rebecca Walker, who's kind of talking about this generational shift and, moving away from the ideas and the kind of positions that had been taken by their mothers. And then we have Naomi Wolf, who kind of really, she was very interesting and still is very interesting. And one of the things that her claim to fame was she said that second wave feminists were really boring people. They didn't want to have any fun. They were anti-male, anti-sex, and, they dressed frumpily. They never wore makeup. They never had any good times. And, yeah, they were just kind of boring women who didn't know how to get the best out of life. So she kind of was one of the, the forerunners for this, talking about girl power and, I guess a form of consumer feminism as well, if you will, there. I mean, suddenly, I remember from my own youth, I smoked a cigarette because a girl was toting cigarette ads about feminist smoked only Virginia Slims, I think was the name of the cigarette, But it was very persuasive, this kind of idea that feminists could also be fun and enjoy life and wear makeup and high heel shoes and whatever it is that they thought was most important. But we also have this kind of idea about inclusiveness that's also talked about by Leslie Hayward, where she discusses, this kind of not, everybody should be included. And I guess here we could mention things like when as an example, we started to talk about sex workers as workers, for example. I mean, it was first when we started to go back and look at what was going on in society that we realized, kind of think, when did this word enter the vocabulary? When did we stop thinking about, sex workers as someone who needed to be rescued from this situation of prostitution, or maybe, you know, we saw all kinds of workers in the sex industry, if it was pornography or whatever, as, you know, being victimized. Now, I'm not really sure that calling something sex work is going to change that. But it entered the vocabulary, and it suddenly becomes something that we're talking about. And if we talk about, you know, prostitution, I mean, it's a big issue in Sweden, where we are trying to kind of figure out what's going on here. Is sex for money, sex work, sugar dating, prostitution? How are they aligned, and what are the underlying constructs that makes this possible? So sex worker kind of hides the complexities of the situations that many women experience. But, you know, it put them in the frame, I guess you could say, along with other kind of borderline or marginalized groups like trans people, you know, so trans persons. And we can also think about the way, you know, we look at feminism as being something where you don't have to integrate. You don't have to have this kind of grand theory of everything in order to be a feminist. So that said, we could kind of let it all cook down to what is, you know, what is the main issues around the third wave. Well, 5 tenets kind of pop out at you when you want to talk about that. The first, of course, is intersectionality, which is concerned with how women experience layers of expression. This was, you know, all of these things, as I will discuss a little bit later, kind of intersect. We're trying to get in all of this diversity that the third wave wants. That is, you know, you want to be inclusive of all women, non-binary women, non-heterosexual women, other, you know, groups of people, not only about, you know, women as such, but we have to think about the people with disabilities or ageism, for example. So how are we going to deal with that? Can we deal with it? Is there some way we can talk about it or discuss it theoretically that we could use as an example for the way forward? Because primarily when we think about the third wave, it's really kind of individualistic. So how do you move from the from the individual to the collective, if you will? Reproductive rights, as Professor Patel talked about yesterday, you know, it's an ongoing discussion. We are still not there. For those of you who maybe look at or are engaged in the international press, you know that Wade versus Roe has been repealed in America, which means that now each of the 50 American states can decide how they want to handle abortions, some of which have become extremely restrictive, which means that women have to travel across state lines in order to access an abortion. You know, this is Wade versus Roe is very important in the American feminist context. Whether we, you know, talking about the third wave, or the first, or the second, or the second wave. I can recount from my own personal experience. My best friend at college, her parents had to declare her legally mentis non compos in order for her to access an abortion. And, you know, she was 18 at the time, a student at university, and, you know, became pregnant and wanted to have an abortion, but couldn't. So the only legal way she could do it in the state where I live was that if she was mentally incapable of caring for herself. Now, Wade versus Roe was the kind of milestone that kind of eradicated all of these kinds of, you know, craziness, if you so will. But now it's back there again. And as Professor Patel talked about yesterday, unsafe abortions are rising, and we expect them to rise even more or become more visible in the American context over the next few years. Individual empowerment, here I think the third wave, it kind of emerged at the right time. It kind of emerged in Congress with development with media, social media, internet, possibilities to do things, to reach groups and peoples that were not possible under the second wave. So you have these possibilities for young people, women, men, whatever, to kind of engage in ways of meeting each other, of circulating ideas that had not been possible for second wave feminists. This also made it possible for a more embracing, a kind of global perspective. It made it possible for women, if you will, all over the world to connect to each other via internet in order to exchange ideas about ways of moving forward, if you so will. However, and I think I would emphasize this again, the fact that you can reach people via internet does not in itself create an opportunity for transformative change. It could very well just be an exchange of information. Yeah. Violence against women was also a major issue, and for the third wave, we have this situation where violence against women, every time we make a move forward, the backlash usually is in form of violence. And we see more violence, rape culture, domestic violence, sexual harassment in the workplace. Every time there is a law that is changed, whether it's in India, in Sweden, or America, you see this backlash coming again where for once maybe, in their kind of feelings of lack of confidence, men go together in order to make life miserable for their female partners or for women in general. So the third wave, one of the 5 tenets here was to kind of work against violence against women. At the same time, which has kind of been used as a kind of a weapon against the third wave, is that they're saying, okay, we should have sexual liberation. We should be free to, explore our sexuality and express it in any way we want. Now, in a patriarchal society, it comes in conflict with all of these other things that I've tried to mention before. So while this is, then I guess you could say the core tenets of the third wave, it has also meant that it has been kind of controversial because it's not, it's so unclear, it's so diffuse, it's so many things, but not so much of anything in that sense. So how do we move forward? That is the question. And maybe we could just kind of say that, what was the quest? What did they want? What was, when you cook it all down, boil it down to the real nitty-gritty of it all, what was the quest? The quest was for a feminism without the category women. They wanted to be, wanted to include all women. It shouldn't be about some universal woman. It should be, the woman's identity or experience of identity emphasizes the diversity and the intersectional realities of different women, that no woman is alike, if you so will. There was also a feminism without a grand theory. And I think this maybe had a lot to do with the kind of the impetus for the third wave was in the American context, where anything that's the least bit socialist or Marxist scares them to death. So, the idea of, kind of looking at theories around materiality, class, No, we don't need that, because in this kind of post-structural society, we can, postmodernism, if you so will, we can, we have to, everything becomes fragmented, and, it's more fluid. We don't need these kinds of theories in order to move forward. And the third quest was for a feminism without exclusion. That would be an inclusion of everybody, everything, at every time. And primarily this was around this kind of, binaries and, male, female, etc. But also, no judgment. No, do not be judgmental. Everybody do what you want, do your own thing. So in essence, I guess you could say, when we look at it from this perspective, in terms of what they wanted to achieve, the third wave feminism addresses the challenges of the 80s that impeded feminist theory and practice, in the sense that, yeah, they confronted second wave feminists. But critics argue that the third wave feminism allows women to define feminism for themselves by incorporating their own identities into the belief systems of what feminism is and what it can become through one's own perspective. And yeah, again, it's this kind of decline, if you so will, to the individual makes cooperation and coalitions less likely to occur, in my way of looking at it. So this is my critique of the third wave. I think this ideas, the quest were interesting, they were profound, and they were definitely a break from the second wave. But I'm not sure that it was, in Swedish you say, a fall forward. I'm not so sure that this was a movement in the right direction towards a more, a feminism that would actually could work on a global scale to kind of embrace empowerment of women and girls around the world. I think this became more of, at this point, a kind of an American project, So one of the major things that the third wavers talk about and that they embrace is difference. And difference is, we're different, and but we are the same. In Manifesto, I think it's on the reading list, one of the writers writes, I'm a power, postmodern, girly, pro-sex, Prada academic, gender radical Marxist, equity cyber, Chicana, cultural eco-lesbian, Latina womanist, animal rights, American Indian, Indian international, diva Jewish, Puerto Rican, working class, Asian American, philanthropic, bisexual, transsexual, lipstick, punk rock, young, old, feminist. Now, this listing of all of these things, the aim is to kind of celebrate the different voices of women of different nationalities, races, classes, and kind of show the plurality of existences, all the multiple ways of being oneself, or being a person. That said, by using this category of difference, we wanted to, feminists wanted to celebrate aspects of femininity that were previously excluded in the second wave, different voices. But this list, if you so will, all of these kind of adjectives frame race, for example, as an individual adjective that qualifies feminism. So if you read this example, the integral relationship or relation of race to gender is to the main project of feminism, is diluted through all of these equivalencies, making the racial critique as only one among a whole range of feminist concerns. So, you could say, if you break this down, which postmodern third wave feminists like to do, we're going to deconstruct this list. What it does, if you're just looking at it, just reading it as it is, the list equates lifestyle of fashion choices. That is, I wear Prada, I have lipstick, I like punk rock, with structural constraints of race, class, and sexuality. Now, this says, and I think Patricia Hill Collins, said it best. She says, why are you making all of these things equivalent, the same? They're the same. It's merely a matter, it's reformulating difference as a matter of style, a matter of, kind of a choice. And it kind of strips away all of the possibilities of political meaning, what it means to be, Black or Chicana or Puerto Rican. So, this plurality is, underlined. That is, we make everything equal, but we don't consider or analyze the structures of racism, patriarchy, or international visions of labor and capitalism that underpin these, individualities or pluralities, if you so will. Now, maybe I'm going a bit too deep here, but one thing that I kind of think about, kind of when I regress to my old school second wave feminist position, is that we don't need, or we don't have to accept postmodern ideas of plurality or difference in order to note that there are differences. That is, we can accept that the notion that differences did play a significant role in Black and third world women naming their own oppression without referring to them as a kind of postmodernity. So, I applaud the way of being inclusive, but I think, again, this inclusiveness is it kind of boils down, it becomes diluted so that, it becomes less than what it would be or could be. So, I think I would align myself with critics who claim that recognizing difference is necessary but not sufficient. Real transformative change will occur with a shift of focus from difference and multiple voices to social relations, which convert difference into oppression. So we have to kind of think about where we are and where we want to go. I mean, it's not as an individual, but as groups. Now, one of the major tenets of third wave feminism is intersectionality. And, this is Kimberly Crenshaw, who kind of often you hear that she coined it, but, it's about a way of thinking about these multiple identities, trying to find some way of reconnecting identity with the kinds of things that create depressions that these identities experience. We don't have the time to go into depth with intersectionality, but, what we can say is that when we use intersectionality or use intersectionality requires recognizing how systems of privilege and oppression that result in multiple social inequalities, such as racism, sexism, classism, intersect at micro-social cultural, micro-social structural level to maintain these kind of disparities. So my point is, intersectionality tried to really maybe show a way, provide a theoretical underpinning for third wave identities or differences, ways of thinking about it. And I think in some respects it probably has eased that process, but not completely. So we have, this idea of intersectionality as a buzzword, and it addresses fundamental concerns among feminists. It does. It gave feminist theory a novel twist. It did. It appeals to a broad audience, both generalists and specialists. It does. It's ambiguous and incomplete. It is. And that way, it kind of gels with this the third wave 5 tenets. It's open enough for everybody to be a part of it, and it's ambiguous enough so that everybody can feel that they're a part of it. Now, the problem here, and I think most of us who try to work with intersectionality find, is that it's maybe too much, or maybe we don't have enough. We don't know how to do a good intersectionality analysis. We try very hard, but what happens? And we just have to kind of maybe go back to look at that list to say, how am I going to do an intersectional analysis of all of these things that are here? Maybe that is not the issue. But we can say, that an intersectional feminist framework, we pointed out, that there are some holes in it. And we realized that the movement was conceived by those who did not take intersectionality approaches, that, maybe we need to think about how we're going to deal with this, how do we make it so that they feel the movement is for them and not excluding them. We also need to think about the fact that when we, practicing feminism that is not intersectional, that is, if we ignore all of these possible identities, that, it is not inclusive of all the women out there in the world. So it's both here and there. And this is part of the problem with, theorizing around the third wave, is that it's messy. I think one writer wrote someplace, it's very messy and it's complex. In that regard, the second wave was more clear, to the point. We could just walk in, step up, and say, this is my approach. You can't do that here. Also, the fact that when we were doing intersectional feminism, it does not mean that we can always chart intersections. We don't know. And especially if we're moving from the individual narratives to something that is more complex, we are stuck. And, the final point that I would like to make, and I think I make it in all my lectures when I talk about intersectionality, it is not additive. And this is the kind of thing that the critics were talking about. How can I add Latina, Chicana, American Indian, Black, woman, female, trans person, and try to figure out what or where is the oppressor here in this kind of list of all of these possible identities that this person share. So, these are issues. They're issues that are still open to debate and that we're still struggling with. So, what can we say, about, or what can I say? I mean, there's a lot that has been said about third wave feminism, but it does offer valuable perspectives on the pursuit of gender equality. Yes, it does. In many ways, it moves forward, even if it's not in the direction, or maybe in the this kind of concrete way that I think about it. But yeah, it does. It brought some new, novel ways of thinking. It's by embracing intersectionality and inclusivity, and the power of digital spaces, of course. I mean, as I said, they kind of developed in concert with each other. They acknowledge the complexities of identity and contradictions. Yeah, this is quite true. But if I think about it in terms of my own critique, and, this is me standing on the outside trying to make up my mind about where I fit in. I would say it's still a bit narcissistic, and its primary focus, with this kind of focus on the individual, and the lack of of materiality. I embrace intersectionality, but I'm ever aware that, as Patricia Hill Collins says, when that abstracted from relations of power, social theories of difference deployed by intellectuals who are privileged within hierarchical power relations of race, class, and gender may operate quite differently than those from emerging scholars situated in context of historical and structural oppression based on race and colonialisms. So my conclusion is I have to keep my eyes open here. I have to be ever aware and think about where I am and what I'm doing when I'm working as a scholar trying to perform intersectionality or intersectional analysis. As Professor Vauquline mentioned on day one, it is, it's precisely the specificity of race, class, gender history, colonization, and geography that creates the conditions that necessitates negotiating multiplicity and difference, particularly within racially subjugated subjects' positions. Now, I also fear that third wave feminism is not necessarily dismantling white privilege or racism within the feminist movement. And I know that might be kind of controversial. I just feel that, maybe the third wave didn't really do so much more on that front than the second wave. But that's my personal opinion. And then, I'm going to just end with my house goddess, Audre Lorde, who said it best. It's not our differences that divide us. It's our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate these differences. So, and my final picture, I just thought I would just show some of the things that have been going on in the world that, that surround this idea of third wave feminism. I think that probably the first revolt was Lysistrata when they, in ancient Greece. And then I found these kinds of pictures on the internet, and I thought they may connect with some of your own experiences of activism around third wave activism and third wave feminism. The failure of academic feminists to recognize difference as a crucial strength is a failure to reach beyond the first patriarchal lesson. In our world, divide and conquer must become define and empower. Audre Lorde, yeah, of course. So to end, these are a list of readings. Of course, I sent some that were more pertinent to my lecture, but these are some in case you want to read more. And yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for having such an engaging and insightful talk with us. Without any delay, I would like to request Professor Vibhuti Patel to kindly share her remarks in the session. And in the meanwhile, I request the participants to please put their questions in the Q&A box or the chat box, or they can also use the raise hand feature. Over to you, ma'am, please.
Thank you, Professor Linda Lane, for giving such a balanced view of third world feminism. Even when all of us got energized and became active in political movements during second wave. My first question is about the introduction of an analytical term as a gender, from women to gender. That also coincided with the third wave. Shift from attack on patriarchy to focus on power, that also happened. And there was a tremendous anxiety among the pioneers of second wave that it is going to take away the political thrust and hijack the agenda to a more diluted. And I think that came out even in your presentation, that unless you difference is okay, but then you also need to see that how these differences also turn into oppressed relationship, or the exploitative relationship. And wherever there is exploitation and injustice, at least second wave came out, and the faith in collective strength that we had. The second one is that does third wave manifest discourse of discontent, no, tremendous discontent against meta theories, discontent against second wave feminism, discontent against so many social movements that were that were liberative in their nature. And where would you place transnational feminism, that a feminist theory and activist movement that examines experiences of women across the borders, no? So it also addresses globalization and capitalism and how it affects women's lives. Yeah.
Well, on the first issue, I think, well, this kind of the third wave, as I said previously, what they offered was a possibility for a more open debate. Opening up to be more inclusive, but this inclusivity in itself is not being open for difference. Doesn't mean that there is a transformative change, and I think this is where we kind of went a little bit awry. And of course, in terms of this kind of discontent around second wave initiatives, it was already there. I think the third wave was just, it was an opportune moment for the third wave to make its entrance, because this kind of discontent around the things that had really not worked so well for second. It was in the limelight, and the Anita Hill hearings just kind of brought it completely to the fore. It just kind of revealed, okay, you've been struggling since the 60s for this, and look, we're still in the same place. Now, my point is, yeah, okay, I agree that this was a very important moment. But when I come to my own thoughts around third wave, I ask myself, how much have we moved forward in terms of the same kinds of issues? And I don't believe at this point that we have actually made the kind of transformative change that we would have expected from this young group who were so aggressive, and but they were like our daughters. Maybe they wanted to move out of home. They wanted to start their own lives, and of course they did. But sometimes I feel that it's been much ado about nothing in some respects. Yeah, a lot of hype, but very little continuous improvement. So that has been my point. When I think about the transnational feminism, I think even at some point the post-colonial countries, the post-colonial researchers were also a part of this kind of critique, because they felt that, again, maybe third wave was initially only an American project. But here I would like to, even if I kind of get a little bit nutty and, disagree about everything, maybe it's old age, I don't know. But one of the things I kind of find refreshing with third wave is that they use the tools, they use the master's tools to kind of move their ideas forward, even if I don't agree with them. I mean, their way of using the internet, of using social media, these forms of engaging across international, transnational borders, has been, phenomenal. We could not have had this kind of universal, I say universal, but this kind of Me Too project without internet and social media. We would not have known about the 4Bs in Korea and their impact on the American, kind of election process. All of these things are made. Pussy Riot, all of these points that arose in conjunction with the emergence of the third wave, with the development of social media and internet, has meant that we can see each other. We can move forward in our argumentation, and maybe the fourth wave would do something completely different. I hope so.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Vibhuti ma'am, any more questions on your end?
No, I think
Mm.
there are 5 questions, no, in the entry.
Yes, and we have a hand raise as well. Ruchiji, would you like to go ahead with your question first?
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you so much for organizing this course. Thank you for the illustrious presentation. It was wonderful. I am Ruchi, a law student from Calcutta, West Bengal. My question to Professor Linda is on the lines of law. Like, what do you think that the fraternity of law or law as an institution can do better to, act as a catalyst for the feminist wave that we are currently in? In USA, of course, since it would be more into your expertise. I mean, the Roe v. Wade is like under a lot of scrutiny over there. It is still not made a federal law. But what do you think that, in other ways also we could benefit if the lawyer fraternity as an institution would benefit the feminist wave? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, from my point of view, I would say the law or a law is a formal institution. It says if you do this, if you don't conform to this, then you're breaking this law. And if you break this law, then the state has the right to punish you or to subject you to some kind of restrictions if you don't do the law. If you fail to respect the law. Now that's a formal institution. This is the state saying we aim to do this and that, and we will punish people who don't abide by the law. Now that's one way of looking at it, and I think the law is very important here. The second part is we have all these informalities. We have all these informal institutions. That is the way we do things, the social order. So that means that you can pass a law and nobody will abide by it. This is what I mean. We have laws that say you should not gender discriminate. You shouldn't discriminate on the basis of gender. You shouldn't discriminate on the basis of class or caste or whatever. But people still do. So my point is you have to nudge people. You have to help them understand that where the law is. And then in this case, I would say if the law is not enforced, that will make that process much longer, or it take us much longer time. So at some point, the state has to say, okay, we're going to enforce what we say. But, if you put the law on the book, at least the state is saying, we don't agree with the way things are. We don't agree with gender discrimination, or we don't agree with violence against women. We will punish people who are violent against women. Yeah. And then we as activists, we have to hold the state accountable. We have to all the way start talking about when the state doesn't do what it says it will do, then we have to remind them. We remind the state. So for me, the law is central, but it's not enough. The aim must be to change the way we feel and deal with, these kinds of anti-feminist activities, like discrimination and violence. Yeah.
Dr.
I
Alia
hope that
Khan,
answers your question.
questions, yeah. Dr. Alia Khan, can you unmute and speak? Questions are in the, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All along, Professor Linda Lane's lecture, I was thinking of how diversity and inclusivity promoted more solidarity. So my first question is about, did the third wave cultivate solidarity more so among the global North and global South feminists than the second wave? And the second is a related question, that what were the constraints in the permeation of the third wave across different cultures and societies? So if you would like to address that, Professor Lane.
Oh, I can tell you right now, your second question, I cannot answer because I have no idea. I don't know. But I can, about diversity and promotion of solidarity, I think, even if I'm critical, I have to say it did in around issues that were of interest but it became very specific around certain issues. So it became more a kind of solidarity across, various projects. It wasn't this kind of, when the second wave, they had this idea that all women would go forward together, the world would unite. I mean, even if it was just inspirational or, at this ideal level, they had these ideas, even if they never really managed to do it. But here you find that in this third wave, because of this kind of focus on specificity, small things, then you move forward. So you had a lot of solidarity around, what can I say? I think I just would name one thing, this kind of issues of web mobs, I guess you could say, anti-feminism on the internet. Suddenly, I mean, here you had global people all over from China to America to India, Africa, who were, going to join together on the web to protest against the way women were being, victimized, bullied on the web. So yeah, but then again, this was something that was connected to a special project. If we look at other issues where I would have liked to have seen perhaps more around poverty or, I don't see that. On the other hand, you have in the European context, there was a lot of solidarity around issues of family, around leave for mothers and fathers, demanding the right for fathers to have more leave to care for their children, or this whole idea of work-life balance became very interesting, especially in the 1990s and forward in the European context, especially in the European Union. But again, it didn't translate to activism in Latin America. It didn't translate to Africa. On the other hand, we do have, some kind of projects around violence against women, female mutilation. But at this point, I would say that we had this kind of white saviorism coming in at one point. But then I think post-colonial countries kind of moved together to kind of erase this and said, no, violence against women is an international problem. It's not just something for us in the global South. Yeah. So there have been moments.
No, but the popularity of Yves Wenzler, so many countries are having 1 million rights movement, no? So that happened on the third wave.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ma'am, should we take more questions or should we ask them to send us to over email?
Yeah, Roxana, Professor Roxana's maybe time we are taking up. Yeah.
Yes, so I request the participants that
in the chat box, and also
yes,
I received email about yesterday's questions. I have answered those.
Yes,
and my email address is on the first page of my. Oh, I can write it in the chat box as well.
Yes.
Yes, I hope that is clear with all of the participants that for further questions, you can send an email to Professor Linda Lane. You can also send it to us at learning@impri@gmail.com, or you can put your questions here at chat box as well. With this, I thank Linda ma'am for her enlightening session and also for answering the questions today. It's a pleasure learning from you always, and we hope to see you in the future IMPRI events as well. Thank you, ma'am. With this, we'll be moving on to our next session. And for that, I am honored to invite Dr. Roxana Marinescu, Professor, Faculty of International Business and Economics, Department of Modern Languages and Business Communication, Bucharest University of Economic Studies, Romania. and visiting professor at IMPRI. She'll address us on the topic, the fourth wave of feminism, digital activism, and the fight for justice. We welcome you, ma'am, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, can you see my PowerPoint? Is it visible?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, ma'am,
Okay.
it's visible.
Thank you very much. I also have some, I would have liked to share some videos with you. Let's hope that things will work out for us. Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm very happy to be here again at an IMPRI program, and I will be talking in the next half an hour, 40 minutes about the fourth wave of feminism, which you probably know. If you don't, you can see it on the screen. Started around the year 2010 and is ongoing. It moves around the idea of women's fight for justice, and its favorite medium is digital activism, so it is happening mostly online. I will very quickly show you the outline of the presentation. I will be, in the introduction, I will be talking a little bit about the context and the evolution of this fourth wave, and then I will present some trends, not all of the trends, because it is very difficult, obviously, to do that. Focusing mainly on the two paradigms, as I see them, of the fourth wave's development. So on the one hand, we have this first paradigm of the feminism happening within the mainstream of the neoliberal framework, and coming top down, if you wish. So somehow from the national or international institutions downwards. And this type of feminism is moving around the ideas of equal opportunities or gender equality. And in opposition to that, we have the second paradigm, which tries to disrupt and replace the neoliberal framework. And it's mostly bottom-up, so from the grassroots level up. At the end, I will say a few ideas about the way forward as I see it, mainly focusing on more inclusivity, more actors to this dialogue on feminism, around some ideas on the feminist ethics of care, and in order to create a feminist space which should be transnational and involve women from all spaces, geographical spaces, but also areas of life. So now talking about the fourth wave of feminism in terms of its context, of course, we need to talk about the neoliberalism in which we have been living around the world in the past few decades. In the western part of the world, the eastern part of the world, the north and the south, most of the countries have come across this paradigm. Neoliberalism focuses mostly on competition and individualism. So rather than on cooperation and collective action. It has at its core prioritization of the interests and flows of financial capital, while at the same time aiming to dismantle the welfare states. And therefore, we can see some sorts of marketization or a lot of consumerism. Within this, the idea that care is mostly an institutionalized service. In, for example, schools or hospitals or hospices and nursing homes and care facilities for disabled people or funeral homes. And this is an idea by John Tronto, not really mine, but I fully agree to this. And there's a direct consequence of this neoliberalism. We have been noticing more issues of discrimination, including gender discrimination, but also racial discrimination and generally discriminations of all kinds, and a lack of diversity. And within this paradigm, we notice that feminism has been somewhat appropriated by it. So that now we can talk, and you have the quotations online and the sources online, we can talk about transnational business feminism or market feminism, so that we can agree with Nancy Fraser when she was talking about feminism becoming the handmaiden of capitalism, so the puppet of capitalism. Feminism also, as it in neoliberalism, focuses on white middle class women and talks from this position. It's a continuation in a way of the previous waves, but we have an emphasis now of some, let's say, more palatable versions of feminism. And we talk now about equality feminism or gay normality or gender equality as part of a mainstreaming process. So that in 2009, we have Angela McRobbie talking already about the death of feminism in her book, The Aftermath of Feminism. Okay, so she was thinking that feminism is already dead and we are living, or they were living at the time, in post-feminism. Mainly because she was witnessing this generation of women and also men coming to maturity who had been born within feminism, were aware of what and how feminism was had developed and its achievements, and who were trying to go back to a period previous to these achievements and to use femininity rather than feminism, and in some sort of, as she called it, substitute for feminism, which she witnessed, or we all witnessed, and she presented in some popular culture books or films. And you have on the screen some examples. Bridget Jones's Diary, which you probably know, it's a set of books, or the series Sex and the City or Ally McBeal. But simultaneously, there are a lot of events and situations that sparked some general outrage, emphasized by the general development of the internet and the social media and the blogs and the platforms, and also due to globalization. So people all over the world, or in most parts of the world, found out, or were able to find out about these events and situations. Here we could mention the Delhi gang rape in 2012, which I'm sure everybody in India is aware of, as in other parts of the world as well, but also some events which you now have on the screen happening in the US or in the UK or in South America, Poland and other regions, or things that had happened decades previously, but women were, after 2010, making them known to the rest of the world. So that we can see this sort of bottom-up or grassroots level happening at the same time, focusing around the idea of justice for women, and mostly opposing two different types of sexual harassment. Street harassment, harassment and violence and discrimination at the workplace, or in the education system, or in the health system, in universities, also campus sexual assaults, or sexual harassment on public transportation, and all sorts of or all types of assault or violence against women. When I say women, probably I should use it in the plural if you allow me. So women's, different types of women, not just the binary type. Such as body shaming or sexist imagery in the media, fighting online misogyny, and so on. And this is in support, this is happening with the support of intersectionality. And Professor Linda Lane was talking about this. And also in the previous 2 days of this online course, you heard the speakers mentioning Kimberly Crenshaw and her article from 1989, in which she explains how discrimination comes in an intersectional way, not just we can't only talk about gender discrimination, but also race, class or caste, social, economic group, generation, geographic location, and so on. And this type of feminism is based mainly, as I was saying earlier, in the online environment. So it's mostly in the social media, under the form of social media activism or online petitioning and other such. And I just wanted to share with you some writings of the fourth wave, but I selected only some from the US and the UK written in English. Of course, there are lots of writings all over the world. This is just my selection. For example, the first one by Rebecca Solnit, who's an American writer, academic, feminist, and so on, which is a collection of essays under the title Men Explain Things to Me, which gave rise to the term and concept of mansplaining, which I think you are familiar with, the idea of men trying to explain things for women, or instead of women who most of the times are professionals in that area, but men somehow feel that they know how to explain better than them. The rest of the books were written by women, feminists, who also had different platforms where this kind of feminist activism was happening or is now happening as well in the fourth wave. So if you are interested, here you have some titles. Okay, now in the next few minutes, I'm going to develop a little bit more this idea of the feminism of the fourth wave happening within the neoliberal framework. And as I said earlier, this focuses on equal opportunities and gender equality. So this idea that, individually we need to somehow get there. And we can get there because if we deserve it, if we have merit, the society and will take care of us and will crack the glass ceiling and will get anywhere we want. This is done from inside the so-called establishment under the form of gender mainstreaming, but also emphasizing a certain position of privilege. The position of privilege of the Western world, of men in this Western world, certain types of men, the white and middle class men, but also white and middle class Western women. You will see in the examples that I have and I will share with you in a minute. However, this type of feminism is important because through it, of course, we get recognition for feminism in general, and also in some places where it is difficult for feminism to develop, we have this kind of imposition. And I here have the example of the countries in Central and Eastern Europe, my country specifically, which is Romania, in Eastern Europe, where, of course, feminism, I mean, not of course, but feminism developed with difficulty, but we had the umbrella, if you want, of this kind of gender mainstreaming feminism coming from the European Union. So somehow the governments needed to continuously accept feminism due to this policy. And here you have a list of some of the institutions promoting it. As I said, this is mainstreaming, so of course coming from the establishment. What is gender mainstreaming in neoliberalism? Of course, in the second and mostly in the third wave, there were some feminists who really wished that gender mainstreaming would happen and would happen really quickly. Because it involves the institutionalization of feminist projects. The idea that we can eliminate gender inequality top down from the institutions with the help of experts and specialists, the civil society, also the political representatives, by creating policies that are good for women in general. Of course, there was a lot of criticism of gender mainstreaming in or within the neoliberal paradigm, and that's mostly because it's superficial. It comes as a sentence or a paragraph at the beginning or at the end of policies. Because it is not internalized by these institutions, by the governments and the organizations and institutions, as it is only introduced there at the request of national or international donors. Therefore, it's not really implemented. It's not monitored, it's not evaluated. It has to face external factors. Sometimes it is put on a hold due to these external factors, as we could see, for example, during the pandemics, or as we are seeing now around the world with wars and conflicts, including in Europe or in the Middle East. And another criticism comes from the idea that some of the actors part of this gender mainstreaming, especially the local feminists and the feminist organizations, tend to be co-opted by these international institutions. They're somehow in between these institutions that give the money for the policies that they want to implement and the local feminists. So they, being in between, they sometimes are co-opted by the donors. And I want to show some examples with you. The first one is a 2014 campaign in the United States during the presidency of Obama, with Joe Biden as the vice president. And it's entitled "It's on Us." The main idea being, or the main aim being, stopping sexual assault in American universities, on campuses, college campuses, which were happening to both men and women. And it was created by the White House together with the White House Council on Women and Girls. And as you can see in the quotation here, it revolves around the idea of fighting sexism and including men in doing it. That's why it's called "It's on Us." And I don't know if now Ms. Priyanka could help me with the first.
Yes, ma'am.
With the first link. Starting from minute 16 and a half, maybe.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Just to give you an idea, to make you feel the vibe a little bit.
Is this the correct video, ma'am?
Yes. Let's play a little bit, a minute or so.
Presentation and Grace. I want to thank her parents for being here. You know, as a father of two daughters, you know, so when they give voice to their own experiences, they're giving voice to countless others, women and men, girls and boys who still suffer in silence. So to the survivors who are leading the fight against sexual assault on campuses, your efforts have helped to start a movement. I know that, as Lily described, there are times where the fight feels lonely, and it feels as if you're dredging up stuff that you'd rather put behind you. But we're here to say today, it's not on you. This is not your fight alone. This is on all of us, every one of us, to fight campus sexual assault. You are not alone, and we have your back, and we are going to organize campus by campus, city by city, state by state. This entire country is going to make sure that we understand what this is about, and that we're going to put a stop to it. And you know, this is a new school year. We've been working on campus sexual assault for several years, but the issue of violence against women is now in the news every day. We started to, I think, get a better picture about what domestic violence is all about. People are talking about it. Victims are realizing they're not alone. Brave people have come forward. They're opening up about their own experiences. And so we think today's event is all that more relevant.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that is enough. Okay, I'll go back to my PowerPoint presentation. And as you could see from it, I hope you could get an idea of why I call it top-down and so on. It's well, you saw the president, the vice president, there was the audience, which you couldn't very well see. And of course, sexism on American campuses hasn't stopped since. They're still fighting it and so on. The second campaign that I wanted to talk about is He for She, 2015 United Nations campaign. Again, this, around the idea of solidarity from men for gender equality, and a campaign promoted by UN Women Global Goodwill Ambassador and Harry Potter actress Emma Watson. Campaign which has in the meantime involved different heads of state and government, also CEOs of companies and non-profit heads of non-profit organizations such as charities, NGOs, people from the sports and the university world and so on. But again, this campaign was criticized because it presented or it involves some sort of position of privilege. And you will hear just a few, maybe a minute or so, of Emma Watson's launching speech. And it will really become clear. And also the fact that she talks in a binary. She talks about women and men. She doesn't include any other categories. So once again, I'm going to ask Ms. Priyanka to play this second video from the beginning so that you can get an idea of how this goes and what I mean when I talk about this position of privilege.
I was appointed as Goodwill Ambassador for UN Women 6 months ago. And the more I've spoken about feminism, the more I have realized that fighting for women's rights has too often become synonymous with man-hating. If there is one thing I know for certain, it is that this has to stop. For the record, feminism, by definition, is the belief that men and women should have equal rights and opportunities. It is the theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. I started questioning gender-based assumptions a long time ago. When I was 8, I was confused being called bossy because I wanted to direct the plays that we would put on for our parents, but the boys were not. When at 14, I started to be sexualized by certain elements of the media. When at 15, my girlfriends started dropping out of their beloved sports teams because they didn't want to appear muscly. When at 18, my male friends were unable to express their feelings. I decided that I was a feminist, and this seemed uncomplicated to me. But my recent research has shown me that feminism has become an unpopular word. Women are choosing not to identify as feminist. Apparently, I am among the ranks of women whose expressions are seen as too strong, too aggressive, isolating, and anti-men, unattractive even.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe that is
Why
enough.
has the word...
So you could actually see how we have this very young, okay, let me go back to the slide where I was, young, for some reason I cannot go back to my, okay, thank you. Young, white, middle class, British woman or English woman who talks about her experience, which of course is difficult and but you know, some people would say, you know, first world problems. Really not including any other experiences of any other women from any other parts of the world, and also only talking about, you know, her girl, the classmates that she had and the friends that she had, who are either men or women. Within the European Union, another example of this top-down mainstreaming gender activity, we have the gender equality strategy of the European Union with its 6 pillars, which you can see here on the slide on the right. And in terms of gender representation, they recommend quotas of around 30% women, both in political and also economic life, which are not necessarily respected by the member states. My country, for example, doesn't respect these recommendations, but the European Union decided to give us examples. So some of the most important jobs at the European Union level are held by women. And here in the pictures, you can see the President of the European Commission, the President of the European Central Bank, and the President of the European Parliament, as well as the first woman President of the European Court for Human Rights. So I am not... Obviously, I'm very grateful and I'm very happy that these things are happening. I am not saying that these things shouldn't happen, but at the same time, you can see the position where they are coming from. Also within neoliberalism, we are witnessing some other trends. One of them is femvertising. I don't know if you're familiar with the term. It basically means using feminism in advertising to promote a certain product. And I could give you the example of the Real Beauty Dove campaign, which didn't go so well in at certain moments in time. The idea around which Dove created this campaign was to show that beauty is diverse. So the idea of diversity, women of different shapes and forms and from different regions of the world, different ages and so on, being promoted in as the visual images of their campaigns. Another trend is lipstick feminism, also called girly feminism, which tries to empower women sexually mostly by embracing traditional concepts of femininity, not feminism, but femininity, such as, for example, using insults, addressing one another with words such as bitch or slut, or using chick, as in chick lit, you know, literature, romance novels, rather, for women. With its form, stiletto feminism, which tries to empower women through fetish fashion, using female physical beauty in jobs such as striptease dancer or pole dancer, considered empowering. Another trend would be leaning in feminism, or lean in, taking its name from the title of the book, Lean In, which was published in 2013 by at the time, CFO of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, who was talking about her obstacles into becoming CFO of Facebook, but also encouraging women to be self-assertive and to believe in merit, because this is the way through which they could crack the glass ceiling, and if they're good enough and worthy enough and meritorious enough, they are going to get there on top like she did. Of course, this was criticized. Some people, such as Susan Faludi, criticized the book and the whole concept of leaning in feminism because it really looks like it's a corporate-backed campaign. So as if it comes from within the corporate world. Obviously, it comes from within neoliberalism. But also, Bell Hooks criticized it for again, presenting this position of some privileged women who are, like Sheryl Sandberg, white, although she was Jewish, if I'm not completely mistaken, and middle class, and she had a lot of money, so she could afford fighting for the position that she had in the company. And now I'm moving on to what I call real feminism of the fourth wave. So the bottom-up or grassroots level feminism. And I want to show with you this theoretical framework, which comes from a manifesto of Feminism for the 99%, published in 2019. And I think I know I gave you this, I shared with you this text as a supplementary reading if you want to read the whole manifesto. And this manifesto is terribly important because it moves around the 11 theses, as they call them, which you now have on the screen, mainly proclaiming that feminism is anti-capitalist, and that it should reverse the paradigm altogether through means of collective fighting and collective work, such as, for example, reinventing the strike. Because capitalism is which comes from racist and colonial violence, continues this kind of racist and colonial work into submitting women and oppressing women of all kinds, and generally subordinating, as in thesis 5, subordinating social reproduction to production for a profit. Okay, so what they want to do is, as they say, turn things right side up. So basically reversing the paradigm so that we can finish into having another paradigm, which would be a democratic, ecologic, peaceful, radical, international, and socialist one. Connected to this, I mean, where the medium, where this is going on the internet, especially in social media, under the form of hashtags. And I'm not going to talk about the hashtags because I think you are very familiar with them. So I'm not going to give you the history or the development of the Me Too movement or the Time's Up movement or Not in My Name and so on. Instead, maybe I will share with you some of the blogs and the platforms that this type of feminism introduced and supported and shared with the rest of the world, because they obviously, them being online, everybody could and can access them. There are some examples here from the United States, from the UK, but also from India. And again, I'm not going to focus on the Indian ones, believing that you know more, obviously, about them than I do. But just so that you have them all on this list, and perhaps we can now go to the first one, the Everyday Sexism Project, which I want to share with you with the help of Priyanka again. Sorry about this. I tried to access them at the beginning. We did a trial and I wasn't able to do this, so I'm thinking that it's easier if she does it to help.
Is this right, Mom?
Yes. Okay, so in this one, as you can see from all the flags that are in the heading of this homepage, it's a global movement. So this is very inclusive and diverse geographically. And what you can do, so if you can go down a little bit, what you can do, and you are invited to do, is submit your own story of harassment or assault or discrimination, which is verified, of course, and then posted on their site. Or you can, okay, you can go down, scroll down, or simply read the stories of other people, and you can, and you know, in this way, offer your support. Okay, so you have the link. We can now stop this share and go to the next one, to the next link, so that you can see another example of such a platform from the United Kingdom. Again, fighting, okay, a UK Feminista is the name of this platform. And again, it fights all forms of sexism and violence against any type of women. If you go down a little bit, you can see how they try to tackle sexism in schools and also combat different types of sexual exploitation. But very importantly, they share feminist resources with us. So we can actually, if we want, we can go there and find all sorts of materials that we can use on our own. Okay, thank you. And moving to the next one. The next one, Professor Linda Lane was talking about Eve Ensler in her speech, and this is promoted by Eve Ensler, the author of the famous feminist play, The Vagina Monologues. And here you see how inclusive this platform is really, and the types of activity and activism that they have all around the world. There are lots of actions in 2025 which are now coming up on the screen, happening in India. So if you want, you can participate. You see them on the screen now, and there are others. There is a history of them, and also on the they have resources, so you can see different types of women and a great diversity of activities that they have, and also they share resources. There is a very interesting song, for example, and video, which has the aim of really making us activate and activate ourselves and empower ourselves, and then fight for different types of you know, going to different types of activism. And the next ones come from India, which again, I think you are more familiar with, so I'm not going to talk about them. But for example, this one, which is interesting. I also saw this poster on Professor Linda Lane's last slide, which is interesting. So it's a connection that we make between the third wave and the fourth wave. And you have the description here if you don't know it, which I doubt. Okay, and also talking about how women in India, especially young women in India, fought against this women's discrimination and sexism. Okay, there is the next one as well from India. And I think, again, you can see the the way they fight. You can actually go on these platforms yourselves and then see what goes on in your own country. Of course, it's a huge country, so you may not know everything that is going on at the moment. And there is another one, actually, another platform from India, which, not this one, there was another one, which I'm not sure you opened.
Yeah, I'm just checking now.
Thank you. The Blank Noise Project one, which is
Yes, just open.
okay, just just very briefly showing it to people, just very briefly. And of course, perhaps about this this campaign and the campaigns that they had about reclaiming public spaces, reclaiming the night, engaging people into being action sheroes, the feminine for heroes, and using public spaces. There is another image, if you scroll down a little bit, which is about asking people to use the campuses and other public spaces to sleep in public, just because they, in India, they accused young people about being sluts. So this is like the Indian equivalent of the slut walk, if you want, which happened in the United States. Okay. This one, I was thinking of this one, this campaign that they had. Okay. So thank you. And going back to my PowerPoint again. Okay. Let's hope I can go to, okay. But a very important element of this grassroots level type of feminism of the fourth wave is the fact that it doesn't stop online. I mean, it starts online, but of course it moves to real life. And you could see that in the examples which I showed with the platforms from India, for example, but we have other examples from the rest of the world, and I selected here one example from Poland, which is very close to my heart because it is a country nearby, but also because of the type of fight that they were doing. Starting with 2016, that was protests, a series of protests and strikes in the next few years, from 2017 to 2021, against a very, very rigid anti-abortion law, which was passed, or it was the intention in 2016, but they managed to pass it in 2021 in Poland at the time. The other examples are from the one on the right-hand side, from Argentina, fighting what they call femigenocide, so genocide against women, under the slogan Ni una menos, which in English, it's in Spanish, obviously, and in English it means not another one. Their sort of, again, slogan was tocan a una, tocan a todas, meaning if you touch one of us, you touch all of us. And that started in Argentina, but was spread throughout Latin America, North America, and also Europe and India as well. The image in the middle is from a rally which was called out by the Elenao movement in Brazil in 2018. They were fighting against the sexism and misogyny of their president at the time, Bolsonaro, sorry. And again, an image which was on the last slide that Professor Linda Lane presented from the US Women's March in 2017, and there was another one in 2018. Finally, just to show you this, my final example, which is really interesting, from Chile. In Chile, they created performances around a poem, which was entitled Un violador en tu camino, a rapist in your way. And the chorus goes, El violador eres tú, so the rapist is you. It spread throughout the world. We had the performance in Bucharest, in Romania, in my country as well, which was very good and very interesting, very empowering, because the lyrics were translated into Romanian and into Romani, which is the language spoken by the Roma population. Instead of showing you that, at the beginning I was thinking of showing you that, but then I thought about showing you the original from Chile. But I put here an image from the same kind of performance which happened in New Delhi in 2019. So that, just to show you that you had it in India as well if you didn't know about it. And what they were trying to do with this, as Cecilia Palmeiro, you have the quotation on the screen, was saying, is connecting all sorts of perspectives. So she's saying here, we were trying to connect indigenous feminism with Black feminism, with migrant feminism, queer feminism, popular feminism, and make alliances. And this is really important to remember. I mean, this is what this kind of, disruptive feminism of the fourth wave is hoping to achieve. And for the final, I'm going to ask Ms. Priyanka to show us a little bit of this performance. Just this is the final one that I'm going to show you, but as you can see, it has English subtitles if you don't speak Spanish. Thank you.
El patriarcado es un juez que nos juzga por nacer y nuestro castigo es la violencia que no ves. El patriarcado es un juez que nos juzga por nacer y nuestro castigo es la violencia que ya ves. Es femicidio. Impunidad para mi asesino. Es la desaparición. Es la violación. Y la culpa no era mía, ni dónde estaba, ni cómo decía. Y la culpa no era mía, ni dónde estaba, ni cómo decía. Y la culpa no era mía, ni dónde estaba, ni cómo decía. Y la culpa no era mía, ni dónde estaba, ni cómo decía. El violador eras tú. El violador eres tú. Son los pacos. Los jueces. El Estado. El presidente. El Estado opresor es un macho violador. El Estado opresor es un macho violador. El violador eres tú.
Okay, thank you.
Eres tú.
It continues, but maybe we can stop here. You can watch it. I mean, I'm sharing the links as well. So then now, I mean, after showing you all of these images, maybe you can see the differences between what I call the first type, the top-down type of feminism, the mainstreaming one, and this one, the bottom-up one, in favor, obviously. I mean, I believe in favor of the second one. Of course, there is criticism which is made to this type of feminism of the fourth wave. Most of it coming from the idea that it's degradation of real activism, because it's easy to just click, share, give a like, share a post, and then you don't actually do anything in real life. This is why it has also been called slacktivism or clicktivism. Maybe the most important criticism comes from the fact that the internet infrastructure is lacking in some parts of the world, especially in some parts of Africa, but also in the so-called rich global north. Some women don't have access to these infrastructures, so that this kind of feminism was accused of being classist or ableist, taking place mostly in the global north. But as I said, even within the global north, there are layers and layers. You need to be educated, to have money to pay for internet access, to have the infrastructure, to have the smartphone or the laptop or whatever, to be able to access this type of feminism. Also, you need to speak English, because mostly it happens in English. The other types of criticism come from the idea that women also need to fight online misogyny, which is, as we know, is really powerful, but also from the fact that some aspects, such as, for example, homosexuality or transsexuality, are criminalized in parts of the world. So people belonging to these groups fear appearing online because of possible criminalization in their own country. And now, just very briefly about the way forward. I believe, together with Rosi Praidoti, in a more inclusive and a more diverse dialogue. And by that, I mean including all sorts of minoritarian subjects. And on the screen, you have the groups that she was talking about. The idea that we need to have alternatives modes of knowing and becoming, not just the Western one, which is perhaps being imposed to the rest of us. And we need to create this kind of transversal relations among us. A feminism moving around the idea of the feminist ethics of care, in the understanding in which John Tronto wrote about it or had about it in Caring Democracy, her book from 2013, and other writings as well, because it provokes, it makes a change in the power balance, so that historically excluded groups come to the decision-making spaces around the idea of care as a public good, and creating networks of transnational solidarity around these common strategies that we can find around care, of challenging patriarchal systems. Together with Mladina Tlostanova, who comes from my part of the world, I want to emphasize this idea of, solidarity among what she calls second world and third world countries, post-communist and post-colonial or decolonial feminism, to create this kind of spaces around the idea of solidarity, not so much, as in the quotation you now have on the screen, not so much on assuming an enforced commonality of oppression, but rather on finding the solidarity foregrounds to move the fight forward. And this is really my last slide, a quotation from the Feminist Manifesto for the 99%, which is defined as a restless anti-capitalist feminism, one that can never be satisfied with equivalencies until we have equality, never satisfied with legal rights until we have justice, and never satisfied with democracy until individual freedom is calibrated on the basis of freedom for all. And here you have the works cited if you want to access them online. So thank you, and now ready for comments or questions from you.
Thank you, ma'am, for having that engaging talk with us without any delay. Vibhuti, ma'am, would you like to share your remarks in the session, and participants can type their questions in the Q&A box and chat box, and we'll take it from there. Over to you, ma'am.
My only one question is that in the current wave of right-wing politics all over the world, and especially the most gory aspect that we are experiencing in Afghanistan, Iran against basically women, Ukraine, and Gaza. To what extent feminists of all three generations, because now you have a second wave feminist, third wave feminist, second wave feminists like us are 70 plus, third wave feminists are in their late 40s, early 50s, and we have a young feminist. To what extent have we been able to achieve anything in terms of solidarity, protection, providing secret support, because that many of us are doing secretly supporting, because so that they don't face backlash from their own very, very cruel states. No, so
I think to a very limited extent. I mean, this is one of the limitations of this slacktivism also. I mean, I know I'm constantly signing petitions online, and I'm constantly, you know, from my wonderful room and office, you know, signing these petitions and then sending them to the international organisms, and of course nothing is happening. And of course we see this backlash and this reversal of some rights that they used to have in these parts of the world. And now with the wars and the conflicts in Europe and the Middle East and in parts of Africa and everywhere in other parts of the world as well, we can see how the fight of local feminists was stopped, I hope, for the moment only. So of course this is sometimes this is an issue that we have, that we would like to do more, obviously, but I don't know what more we could do, to be very, very honest. I mean, you know, except for speaking against what is going on and then raising our voices and trying to show our solidarity with them. Unfortunately, there is. I don't see what else we can. I don't know if you have other thoughts. Maybe you want to share them with us, but. Apart from that, then this is very frustrating. This is one of the frustrations of this fourth wave, you know, the fact that, you know, we are facing this kind of backlash all over the world, and in some countries more than in others. There's backlash in my country as well, but with this what is happening in politics, with elections, with we can see it in the United States. I mean, what can we expect? We see it everywhere in the world, this kind of framework. This is what I wanted to end my presentation on a positive note. I mean, this is more wishful thinking than anything else, perhaps, hoping that things will change, that our voices will be heard. But to be honest, I'm kind of, at the moment, I'm rather pessimistic about it.
Because during 70s, even when so many Iranian students who were fighting against dictatorship of Shah, they took refuge in India, and we saw to it that our government did not deport them. No, similarly, African youth fighting against apartheid and coming to India, like we could organize their public meetings, COSATU, or African National Congress, or the Women's Wing, that we could do, or many other dictatorships where they had, like, they would take refuge, and we could provide for their support, and also secretly we would do, because if you come out in open, they would face backlash, no? So that,
yeah.
So are such things happening, like provide?
Yes. In my country as well. I mean, there are, as we know, a lot of Ukrainian refugees and women's groups that I know of in Romania, and definitely in other countries in Europe, and perhaps other parts of the world as well. And also they come on an individual basis and really trying to learn about feminism here. But you know, I feel frustrated that we're not doing enough of what we could. Perhaps.
And this we would do only to salvage our own conscience. No, it's not going great.
Yeah.
What you are doing, because you would really feel that what you believe in certain ethos and values, and you are not doing anything. So at least nothing. Don't talk about it. Don't write a about what you are doing. No, earlier we would write whatever we did, but certain things we don't write. So we would write only in abstractions and generalizations, but specific thing, because we know it's not I who is going to suffer, but it is the person who is here, no, in a vulnerable position suffers.
Yes, indeed.
Very good, both the presentations. So much to learn.
Yeah, it was difficult, like Professor Linda Lane said when she was talking about the third wave. I mean, the fourth wave is perhaps even more complex.
And
And I
both of you,
really
don't
try to
scope, and
systematize.
your unit of analysis was also whole world, no? That also made it far more challenging for you. But it's the best way to conclude 3-day course. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. We do have one question in the Q&A box. In lieu of time, I'll just read it out on Paki's
If she wants
behalf.
to speak, let her speak.
Oh, okay, sure. Paki ji, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi, hi, Professor Roxana. Thank you so much for that presentation. I just wanted to ask you, spoke about how a lot of the Protestant campaigns that are conducted online also kind of translate into real life, and then we are able to do more with that. However, as Professor Patel spoke yesterday, patriarchy has an inherently shape-shifting nature. And so anything that changes, patriarchy shifts with it and kind of comes in other forms. And so basically, anti-women and anti-LGBTQIA plus sentiments and anti-minor and all of these sentiments are also um, pretty prevalent online and are translating then to real life, such as as an example, there's this game called Roblox that I was reading about or watching about, I don't remember, but that has a metaverse which basically has a place where you can kill the pregnant or rape the minor, or but basically there's absolutely wild things that are happening online, and then these things kind of translate into real life as well. And I just wanted to kind of get your comment on the same, and what may be the ways forward in that capacity as yeah, as a feminist movement trying to kind of yeah.
Yes, thank you for the question. It's very, very pertinent. I'm not a gamer myself, and I'm not very much, I mean, I am aware of the violence going on in these games, especially from my students. I had students I have had students who wrote about this type of violence in their graduation papers and dissertation papers. So they made me aware of this. And as far as I understand, there are different types of violences. The one is the type of violence happening in the games itself, what you were talking about, but also the kind of violence that happens around playing the game with the players themselves, who are very violent against women players. So therefore, as my students told me, sometimes they assume male avatars, or they pretend to be males in the game if they don't have to speak and so on. So because of that. And I don't know what we could do, especially nowadays in this context of general deregulation that is happening with the online sites, like in social media with X under Elon Musk, and you know how they now Facebook and the Meta in general companies talking about stopping stopping how they were trying to regulate the content, you know, how they were to what's the word, moderate the content. That's the word that I was trying to find. And they're now stopping this moderation of the content. And then this is seems to be accepted, not only accepted, but promoted by the American presidency, by other, you know, important leaders in the world. And I really don't know how other than protesting against it, we could fight this phenomenon, which I think is increasing rather than decreasing.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Several nation
I'm sorry, I
states
really don't know what else to say
several
because
nation states have taken
Yeah.
action. For example, Australia, they also banned certain portals and certain websites. So that, and it in a piecemeal way, even institutions are doing, because when we experienced massive invasion of pornographic sites on screensaver as well email ID, and I, being a member of secretary of the Women Development Cell, when I told my vice chancellor, it was centrally prevented by so this kind
yes,
of
but
initiatives, or the cyber cell, no, that they also
yes,
do.
but you need to have the organism to do it and the will to do it, the political will of the governments and to do it. And it looks to me that they don't want this. They want the chaos. They want because of course they can do whatever they want if people are not united and not solidary with one
So
another.
then we need to build public opinion, and also political this thing will also has to be created.
But I'll just jump in here quickly. I think, when we're talking about these things, we must look at who is benefiting. Who's benefiting by this? And this is, this is some of the things that you brought up in your lecture, Professor Marinescu. This is a part of the new liberalism, and capitalism is winning. It's profit in discord. There's profit in misogyny. There's profit in patriarchy. So I think we have to keep this ever at the forefront and remain vigilant, because if it wasn't profitable, Elon Musk wouldn't be involved.
Exactly.
Let's get real. This is they're making money on the backs of the weak and the ones who cannot guard themselves against their invasive techniques. So yeah. We must remain vigilant and be as active as we possibly can, because even if there are a lot of problems associated with this, the internet and these kinds of social media has offered so much more, as you so clearly showed in your lecture. So the benefits from us who have not been able to address these issues as individuals or small groups in the countryside, whatever. The internet has given us opportunities to meet with like minds, but at the same time, it has also offered these side effects, or the negative side of it. So I think we have to kind of up our game as well and fight this kind of situations that are occurring always. And I think the fact that you mentioned how your vice chancellor took the initiative to this, maybe we need to encourage others to do the same. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. We have another question. Ayla ji, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, Professor Roxana, thank you very much for bringing together various threads of the fourth wave feminism. A question that I ponder upon as a labor economist who's also interested in labor market outcomes for women, especially with the expanding and formalization of the labor market, is that at least in my country, in Pakistan, there is a marked divide between the so-called labor movement and the feminist movement. And I was wondering as to your impressions about how digital activism can help bridge this divide. What would be for example, the ecosystem required for that to happen? Thank you.
Thank you. Very, very, very good question. And I'm afraid, the way the question is asked about my impressions, this is all I can offer you, my impressions. That's very much so, because I think in some countries maybe, and in some very particular situations, the gap has been narrowed, not totally closed, but maybe narrowed. But in others, it is really very difficult to think how it could be done. And I think you are absolutely right in suggesting, if I understood correctly, that in some parts of the world, and you gave the example of your own country, in some parts of the world, the feminist movement tends to be to move away from the and to become irrelevant in the context of the movement of workers, for example, the workers' movement or the movement for workers' rights. It is happening in my country as well, I think. Again, maybe we should look at who benefits this and how why this is done, and who tries to divide us, doesn't allow us to, and then try to get together somehow. It is very difficult in the post-communist countries, and I come from such a country, a post-communist country. The general tendency is for the feminist movement to be liberal rather than left-wing, as maybe as a like a position, trying to position, feminists trying to position themselves against the times of, the communist times, which are generally perceived as tyrannic and despotic and dictatorial. And now there are some buds of left-wing feminism coming, especially from younger feminists. And therefore, I can only hope that in the future, this kind of left-wing feminism will try to approach more the labor movement. But again, it's difficult because the labor movement is divided. I'm now talking about the situation in Romania, divided in itself, and the trade unions side with the political people and the power and the establishment. So it's kind of difficult because I mean, I can see that we should converge the two fights, but I can only hope that in the future this will happen. And perhaps in other parts of the world, I don't know, I suppose in Sweden, maybe this is happening at a quicker pace. So maybe Professor Linda Lane has something to share from her adopted country. I don't know, at least from where I am, we're looking up to Sweden and hoping that they can give us some lessons, but I don't really know if this is actually happening like that there either.
No,
Thank you. Thank you
I
very
think
much.
you should probably be looking elsewhere. Because the same kind of situation in Sweden is, that's taking place in Romania is taking place in Sweden. The trade unions are moving away from their, position previously that was so much a part of the Swedish identity, and especially until the 1990s. But I think this has become it's another discussion about who are
Yes.
the working class. Because, people are not identifying as workers anymore. And especially as the labor markets become more and more informal, you're seeing another kind of breakdown. And it's not just a separation between workers and the middle class. It's a separation between workers who have formal employment and workers who are in the informal employment, with this kind of precarious work being much more invasive. So, yeah, it's... I have no answer either. It's a desperate situation, but I don't. If there's an alignment right now, I would say the trade unions are aligning more with these kind of liberal views instead of kind of pursuing activities or plans of action that we would have expected them to do maybe in the 1990s and the early 2000s. So they're looking at the stability of the labor market, who's stable, and the ones who are outside, unfortunately, are are less visible and they are less active because they have less possibilities to be active in terms of their precarity in the labor market.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. And we have another question. Asta, would you like to go ahead and ask your question? All right. Perhaps I can ask on her behalf. So she's asking, do you think that the fourth wave has been centralized to those women who have privileges to resources? And if it is the case, then the feminism have become more narrow rather than inclusive and diversified?
Again, a very good question. And I think I touched upon this when I talked about the critical views towards the fourth wave of feminism. Yes, to a certain extent it has. And I explained why, because it is in a way, I mean, we have had, during the pandemic, for example, we have had a lot of surveys on who uses the infrastructure in each home. And of course, we noticed throughout the world, in the Western countries as well, that women were the last ones to use the infrastructure. If there was only like one phone in a household, the phone went first to the man who had to work online, if the case was such, and then to the children who had school online, and then finally to women if they ever wanted to work. And even in my own country, I mean, I had a colleague who is a single mother and has 2 children and only 2 rooms. And of course, I mean, this is the kind of situation that we can see all over the world. They only had 1 laptop. And during the pandemic, her children had to attend school, and she would close herself in some sort of wardrobe to have her classes. She was a professor at university, but there was no space for her. She could only use her phone, and so on. So there is this aspect of course, on the one hand, having the infrastructure. Like, for example, even now, Romania prides itself of having the internet access and wonderful internet and so on. But when I tried to, just before this program began, I tried to access my videos and the links online, and the people in India and Professor Lane in Sweden said that they couldn't see them. So there is infrastructure, but then access to infrastructure, access to resources, access to become digitalized, to speak English, to be part of it. So of course, who has this? And the person who asked the question is absolutely right. It's centralized towards women who have these resources. This is why in the way forward slides, right at the end, I was thinking that, okay, something should be done to be more inclusive, to include not only, women of all kinds, different types of women, but also maybe non-human entities and other parts in this kind of dialogue. We can learn from one another, but again, this is very complicated, like because we really want to escape the neoliberal paradigm. We don't want to continue it, to, for example, do projects in which we give a bit of money there in India to some women in some sort of community, or in Romania to have a small project where you give some laptops to women in the Roma community and so on. We really try to disrupt the whole thing. And I mean, that's the ideal that I'm hoping I will get to see in my lifetime, but I'm very pessimistic about it on the other hand. So yes, well, we can see this centralization of resources and focus on women who have resources against women who don't, and people who don't in general.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And since we do not have any more open questions, this brings us to the end of this 3-day program on feminism from suffrage to social media. And with this, I invite both the professors firstly to share any remarks that they have for us as we part ways in this program. Professor Linda, perhaps you can go first, and followed by Professor Roxana, and then I'll invite Professor Vibhuti Patel for the final closing remarks. Over to you, Linda, ma'am.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for a very interesting and thought-provoking session. As usual, when I attend these lectures and these courses, I learn a lot. So it's like free education. So thank you. And of course, participating, listening to the questions and to my colleagues make their presentations, they also give me a lot of food for thought about how I can think about the work that I want to do as a researcher going forward. Now, I think one of the things that was so interesting for me in this course was being able to be a part of the build-up, to see how everything from the first day, from the discussion about the suffragettes onward, how they actually, they are intertwined. And I'm not so sure that this kind of wave metaphor is the right one, because the one thing that you can, or that I experienced from being a part of this, is the interconnectedness, this kind of intersections of time and space around issues that are still central today. So, the fact that we have internet, the fact that we have multimedia, it is there, but it has not changed the questions that we are asking and the kinds of necessities, the needs of what we need, how we formulate our needs going forward in, as Professor Marinescu said, what will we do in our time? Will it be in my lifetime, So I would like to perhaps be a bit more optimistic in the sense that I think that, yeah, okay, we have a lot of clickism and slackism and whatever, but I'm going to quote Fannie Lou Hamer, who is also one of my house gods. She says, people complain because you don't show up for demonstrations and, nobody is there. She says, but if we're three, we are more than one. So, yeah, even if it's three people who show up and click and maybe one of them go forward and move their activism from the net to the real world, that is a step forward. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just jump in. Thank you very much, Professor Linda Lane. I fully agree, especially when you talk about, trying to be optimistic at the end. And yeah, I'm going to try and be optimistic for your sake, especially that there are so many young people in the audience. Maybe not within my lifetime, but maybe within your lifetime, we will see real change happening. And I also agree with the idea of the metaphor of the waves not being necessarily good. And you could actually see this today, because we used, and actually without knowing what you are going to present, and you without knowing what I was going to present, we had some similar images and stuff, just because of the continuity and the flexibility of the waves, the so-called waves. I would like to also thank the organizers of this program very, very much. It is, I don't know, the fourth year in which I'm taking part in IMPRI programs in general, and this specific program. Every January in the past few years, I have had the pleasure and the honor of participating in this type of programs, and I'm very happy all the time to see so many people registering for the program. And this time I'm very happy because I see one of my students online. I saw her name and I was very happy. Hello, Anna Banu. And last year as well, I had another former student of mine who attended, and I'm quite happy to see that there are people from other countries as well. Not that India is not a big enough country, it is, but as we heard, there was somebody from Pakistan, and also I read a message in the chat box, a young man who said that he's coming from STEM. So not necessarily from this area of study, which is really good because we're meeting, here we're meeting, IMPRI is giving us the space to meet people from diverse backgrounds and diverse cultures, and we can, I suppose, move the world forward. And a special thank to Professor Vibhuti Patel, who introduced me to IMPRI in the first place, and who's been a wonderful host today and in the past few days. And I wasn't able to attend the meetings yesterday and the previous and the day before yesterday, but I can assure you that I watched them online. Thank you very much for sending me the links, and I watched them late at night when I came home from work. And congratulations for this program once again.
Thank you, ma'am. Before we proceed to Vibhuti ma'am's closing remarks for the day, can I quickly ask the audience that if you have any feedback for us, please do let us know. We will be sharing the feedback forms with you, but if you would like to unmute and share some feedback for us, we would appreciate it. So you can raise your hand if you want to share some comments for us. That would be lovely. Or you can just unmute yourself directly as well. That works too.
Good evening. Can you listen me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm Deepika, a research scholar from Central University, Himachal Pradesh. I really like the program, but I want to know more things about Indian feminism, like waves during 4 waves during the different periods in US, UK, and other foreign countries. I have read about so many things, means in detail about these waves. But from the point of view of India, I didn't get too much. But I want to, like, if in future these kind of, if it's possible, then please include Indian feminism waves also in this program. And all the resource persons were really very nice lecture. I have listened all the 3 days. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deepika ji. Alia ji, please go ahead.
Yes, I would just like to appreciate the efforts of IMPRI in bringing together this wonderful panel of speakers who gave such enriching and enlightening perspectives into the evolution of feminism, I would say. And I feel especially privileged as a Pakistani woman who really does not have the opportunity, except for digital connectivity, to interact with all these panelists. And I look forward to more discourses because I think we need to stay connected and need to keep exchanging the evolutionary processes in order to play our respective roles in whatever capacities it is possible, because I think activism has many different faces and many different ways to influence. So again, a big thanks to all the speakers and to IMPRI, and especially to my friend Professor Vibhuti Patel, whom I have gotten to know in relation to my work. And thank you very much again.
So delighted you have been in so many important programs of IMPRI. You have been there. It is really, we feel connected. Earlier we used to meet in person, but now I think meeting online is also very.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Alia ji. Lakshita ji, would you like to go ahead? Okay, all right. We have a lot of comments coming in the chat box, and I think that we'll get to those. In the meanwhile, we can go to Vibhuti ma'am's closing remarks for this 3-day program now. Ma'am, the floor is all yours.
Yeah. I think it gives me great sense of satisfaction that the effort with the IMPRI team has put in, and the massive response from women and participants from various walks of life, whether from science or engineering or think tank or political parties. All of them are showing interest in feminism, and that is why I think even the fourth course, this is the fourth course, and I would like to tell Madam who asked for feminism in it. Indian context, even that was taken up in the earlier sectors. So I think I feel very. Please go ahead.
No issues, ma'am. You can take a break, ma'am. We can come back to you. In the meanwhile, if anybody else wants to share a feedback, that would be great. Or I can just read out some of it from the chat box while Vibhuti ma'am gets back to us. We have Smitha Matthew writing us that thank you very much. So thought-provoking. The sessions were, it was complete delight, especially since my academic study has been in STEM. We have another one with barely any exposure to these concepts. Another one we have is truly enlightening presentations, debates that light up the way forward. Yes, ma'am, would you like to continue? Are you good to go?
So I think the way we organized the session, because we did not want to repeat the previous 3 courses we had on feminism. One was more about the historical roots of feminism in South Asia, in India, and in several countries that we had a first course at focused on. Then we went into the political and ideological debates among the feminists. That was also in the second course. Then the issue-based course we had, that which are the important concerns of feminists over last 200 years. And this is why this time we took the waves. Though there are no watertight compartments about the waves, but there have been certain priorities, because even when 200 years back, Mary Wollstonecraft's work was seen as extremely subversive, there was a tremendous backlash. And then in course of time, how more and more people started, both men and women started accepting liberal feminism, and the kind of backlash that we had in the second wave of feminism, where we talked about autonomy from the political structures and deciding our own agenda and executing our own agenda without getting pressurized by the bosses, political bosses, or even the larger social movements which were not acknowledging women's question. So that was the thing. Even the issues which were relationship with the state became very important concern in the second wave feminism. And the third feminism, where today we got a very exhaustive presentation from Dr. Linda Lane, and where more and more individuation was happening, and also the postmodern feminism, which wanted to decenter, which demanded decentering from the meta narratives and meta discourses and meta theories. I think that is also a very important thing to understand, because when we talk about pluralism and plural thinking and plural streams of feminist thought, I think we all have to learn from each other. And that is why I think even choice of resource persons in this course, also we saw to it that those who had, who were open and inclusive to discuss this various priorities in feminist movement with enough openness. I think that is the most important part of this course, that it is not my way or highway approach, but all of us are humble enough to learn from each other. So I think firstly, Dr. Leena Pujari's this time, but earlier it was about the more of a philosophical, the earlier 3 courses also she was there, but this time she focused on unfolding of suffragist movement in the US context. Earlier, she had done it for the UK context. And even special request to Vauquline, mainly to bring in some of the hidden areas, because we should never forget the feminist initiatives of the marginalized. I think that was a very important thing, because they are hidden from history. So it is bringing in their work into the mainstream, and also generating healthy curiosity among the young fellows and participants to work on all these hidden feminists and their important work. Because if we don't learn from the history, we repeat the mistakes of history, and it is very important to learn from our foremothers. And I think some of the issues of the newer issues which the second wave feminism brought in, especially gender-based violence and focus on reproductive rights, which was the most stigmatized topic, because we know even from the 13th to 18th century, women who were killed and who were dubbed as witches were the ones who were helping women in distress to get out of a crisis situation when they were assaulted, or when they became pregnant, or when the pregnancy was not within the marriage. No, the reproductive rights encapsulates all aspects of control over patriarchal control and feminist expression, collective as well as individual work. And then the question of how the literature or poetry and the media that defines feminism, and also it doesn't remain only in the textbooks, but it also gets into the grassroots movement, and that is very important. And today's both the presentations extremely grounded, politically aware, and in terms of both epistemology and the praxis, they were extremely important for us to understand our own reality, and especially the concept of everyday feminism. No, that wherever we are, we question patriarchy. And I think all the streams of feminism, they only in the final analysis, they are challenging the patriarchal control over women's sexuality, fertility, labor, and autonomy and dignity. So I think I get a great sense of satisfaction with the kind of presentations and the content of presentations by all 6 resource persons, and the responses and the active engagement of the participants who are in the younger generation. That once again, this course proves that feminists are not dinosaurs. We are extremely important, and the posterity we have to learn a lot from the younger generation, and there is a lot of give and take that can happen. No? So that is very reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And with these closing remarks, we come to the end of this program. And I would now like to conclude with the formal vote of thanks. So as we come to the end of Feminism, from Suffrage to Social Media, Reflections on the 4 Waves, an online international winter school program, a 3-day immersive online certificate training course organized by IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center, I, Priyanka Negi, researcher at IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose the formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center, New Delhi. We sincerely thank our chair and expert, Professor Vibhuti Patel, and our session experts for day 3, Dr. Leena and Dr. Roxana Marinescu, for graciously sharing their valuable time and providing participants with profound insights and knowledge during this online certificate program. We thank all of our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated throughout this deliberation. Readings for these sessions have been shared in your email, and a video of the session will also be shared with you for learning. Additionally, please do fill up the feedback form to ensure that IMPRI continues to organize future events which cater to your academic interests and pursuits. We are grateful if you're watching us later on YouTube, listening to us on our various podcasts, or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join us in future IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning programs. I wish you a very good evening. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Priyanka, for moderating the session and also doing all the work for last 3 months. You have been organizing so many things to make the course grand success.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.